Welcome to our class on Dr. Gemara. As we mentioned, the approach of the Dr. Gemara is much less abstract than that of the Sefer Gaon. Their tunos is a little bit in the middle, but here the Rebbe Confronton is, I want to tell you a little story. On Shabbos I was reading a little sefer I bought many years ago called The Student's Guide to Talmud by Cages. And it said he brings various people who did method books, and he brings Rabbi Yitzchak Confronton. He says he wrote a 12-page book on methods. It's true. All this text really fits into. Yeah, it's really a very tiny book. It used to be put out. It used to be put out as a pamphlet, but various people have extended, like Rav Langol, he added different texts and things like that. But the actual, if you were just to put it on a little piece of paper, it wouldn't. He says it's 12 pages, the volume that he had. Now, of course, the beauty of what we're trying to do here is to spell the thing out, to expand it so that you would use it. Because since it's written by a Rishon, it goes really quickly. The words are very packed with meaning, and because we're not sensitive to those meanings, so it sort of just it goes in one ear out the other. That's why I'm sort of breaking it down into this visual logic. So what I tried to do a little more also is to bring examples, because he's bringing us the key words, but not all the time is he spelling out the examples, because he figures, you can go and look for them yourself. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring not only the text here, but I researched examples. I tried to find simple ones. Sometimes it's not so simple because you're in the middle of a pilpul or it's a complex issue. But I spent a lot of time trying to bring as simple examples as I could. Okay, so he's talking about now the key words of the Gemara. I made my little computer game based on Rabbi Carmelo Levishon's book, Student Age Guides to the Talmud, whatever, because these are the important. These words are recurring all the time. But it's more than just knowing the vocabulary here. You have to know what the key logical steps are. So we're up to, I believe it's the penultimate chapter here, and he's telling us the key operating words of the Talmud. Okay, we left off with Pamad Memorim, Aval, and Mihu. That's where we left off. So we said like this. He said, not me. These key words, Pamad Memorim, Aval, and Mihu, Ham Miut. They all come to Mamayet. They're akimtas. They narrow. They eliminate a broader topic. Vaha ma'ate hadavar shalo kedino so kedin ha'omer. And what they're telling you is that you have to limit what we said above. Okay, it doesn't have this. What we're going to say now with the aval and the mihu is a limitation. It's going to be a limitation of what we said above. The karov lahem lashon afal pi or afal gav. And it's similar to the concept of afal pi or afal gav. Now, I brought some examples to explain this, okay, because I wouldn't have said that it's a miut. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but we'll see that it really, the way that it's used is going to come to eliminate. Pamad is definitely a kimta. Aval I thought was like an ella, but it's not. It's he says a miu and also a miu. Let's look at some examples that I found. Okay, this is not his examples. These examples that I found. Here's an example of both Madavoy Mormon and Aval. It's Baba Kama. Ketzad Hashem mu'edis le'echol eser uila. This is how is the Shane? In what circumstances is Shane muad to eat what it is fitting for it? So the Mishnah says the following: Habehema mu'edis le'echol peros v'yirokos. Habehema is muad. It means pays full damages the first time. To eat fruit and vegetables. Ochla kasusa kalim. What happens if this animal eats clothing or utensils? So then it's mishalam chetzi nezek. It only pays half damages. Now, the Medavoy Memorial goes on the first statement. It says, under what conditions are we talking about when we said that the behema is mu'edis le'echol peres v'yirakos? Okay? B'rishus hanizak. That's only in the rishus hanizak. Aval, b'rishus harabim pater. But in the rishus harabim, he is patur. So we made a general statement that, the Mishnah made a general statement that the shane is muad to eat peres and yirakos. And now we're mamiding that statement. We're limiting it. We're saying that statement is only true in Rishus HaNizak, but it's not true in Rishus HaRabim, where it's Patur. Okay? So these are Simanim B'Metavoy is a mute of a statement that came before, and it says it does not exist as a total klal. Okay? So let's go over that. He says, the lashon of Madmer Aval Mihu Hem Miut, the Hamiute Hadava Shalo Kedin also Kedin Ha'omer Lamala. It's to limit some case, so you should not rule in that case as the case that was just presented. And he says it's Karov Sha'afal Pi or Afal Gav, which means Afal Pi, this is how I understand it, even though I made a general statement and I said that a shane is muad to eat yirakos and peros, I want to tell you now a limitation. That whole statement is only Rishus HaNizak, but Rishus HaRabim, it's going to be potter. Okay? So that's it. That's a question of mute. Now he says mihu. I found an example of mihu. The Gemara says the Mishnah is not like Reb Shimon ben Menashe, the Tanya. We have a Mishnah like this. Our Mishnah says that a shore that's Nogeach Hegdish or Hegdish that's Nogeach to a shore of Hedjit, both of them, whether the Mazik or the Nizak was a Hegdish, so then there's a Patur. No, there's no payment. So we have a Mishnah, a Brisa of Reb Shimon ben Menashe that says different than our Mishnah. What does it say? Shor shel Hegdish, Shinogak shor shel Hegdish, or shor shel Hegdish, Shinogak shor shel Hedjit Patur. That's like our Mishnah. Okay? Whether a hedjit is nogeach a hegdish or a hegdish is nogeach a hedjit, no one pays. How do we know? Shenema shora ehu v'lo shor shel hegdish. In the pasuk it says keshigak shora ehu. When a shore damages his friend's shore, then there's payment. But hegdish is not your friend, and therefore there's no payment, and it's either way. Comes along Reb Shimon ben Menashe, and he says it's not true. The shor shel hegdish and ogeach shor shel hedjit is butter. That's true. If a hegdish gores a hedjit, then the hegdish is not paid to the hedjit. But he says the hedjit, the secular shor, shenogach shor shel hegdish, that gores a temple shor, some dedicated temple, ben tam ben muad mishalam nezek shalem. It doesn't matter whether it was the first time or not. A very big chiddush, if a secular shore damages hegdish, then it doesn't matter if it's the first or the third time. He always pays nezek shalem. That's what Reb Shimon ben Menashe said. So the Gemara said, Amrei, my cause over Reb Shimon. What does Reb Shimon hold? Irei hu dafka, if he holds, the pasuk says shorehu, and that's dafka. You have to only pay for shorehu, not hegdish. So then a filu shel hedjit shenogak shor hegdish pater. So why does he say when a secular shore hits the temple shore, you have to pay? If re'ehu is dafka, it should go either way. The re'ehu lav dafka, and if you're telling me no, re'ehu is not meant to be re'ehu to mayet a shore of hegdish, so then filu hegdish nami ki noga hedjit l'chayev. So then everybody should be chayev. So make up your mind. When it says ki shor shor ehu, if it means dafka re'ehu, so whether the shore is a the one who does the damages from the temple or not, and the receivers from the temple, that shouldn't matter. And if it's Slav Dafka, so then everybody should have to pay. So where does Rev Shimon get the split thing? So he said like this. The Gemara says, no, really Reb Shimon Menashe holds that when it says Shor Ehud Dafka, so how come when you hit a temple shore you have to pay? Umihu, you see, limitation. The hedget ki nagach lehegdish hainu time in the machayev. Why, when a secular shore hits the temple shore, the secular person has to pay? Mishum the kol maisei le mikal v'choma the hedget, because there's a kal v'choma that you're going to learn that he should pay from the case of hedget. What is that? Uma hedget shinogat shore hedget chayev. So ki nogat shore hegdish lo kol shechein the machayev. If a secular shore hits another secular shore, you pay. So certainly if a secular shore hits a temple shore, you should rather have to pay. So he learns it from the Kal V'chomer. The Gemara goes on and on and on. Explains it, tries to knock it down. I only put the thing. I just want to show the mihu. The mihu is a limitation, right? Because we said that really, if you're going to learn re'ehu dafka, so it doesn't matter if the victim was a secular shore or a temple shore. Excuse me. It doesn't matter whether if the shore that was damaged was hegdish or the shore that did the damage was hegdish. Since one of those two partners are not called re'ehu, you should be patur legamrei, right? So that was akasha. If it's dafka, then both, whenever the shore is involved, whether he's the mazik or the nizak, it should be patur. So the mihu is going to explain a limitation. It's true that it's dafka, and it's true that you would say whether the victim was heged or hegdish, as long as the hegdish shore was involved, there you'd be patur. However, we have a special reason to machayev the heged shore hits a temple shore. A special reason. And that's why we have our limitation. He's not patur here, because we're going to learn a kal v'chomer from heged. If the heged hits the heged, so then when the heged hits something holy, certainly should pay. Okay, that's how the Gemara works. Okay, so there is an example of the mihu. So, and we're always going to look how it's a limitation on the statement that came before. Okay? Now let's look at the lashon afilu. He's going to analyze the lashon afilu for us. He says the afilu le'olam ba imo lo miboy zeh ela afilu zeh v'zedin. When you see an afilu, you have to fill out and spell out the two parts. And afilu means lo zu, af zu, as we learned there in Tfunos. So it always implies that not only this, but even this. Afilu means an af, even. Okay? Kamosh amru b'meseches nida. V'afilu pechusa o husra. Oh, Sarah, I'm sorry. So let's look at that case inside a little. When I couldn't find my Baba commas, I wrote, or when he quotes the case, I use his. Okay, Tana Rabbanon, it says like this. Zikna, a woman who has passed, she's an older lady, she's passed her menstrual cycles. So, a Zikna she'ovru aleo shalosha onos v'roasa. She's an older woman, and she goes through 3 cycles, and then all of a sudden, she sees blood. So there, the din is daya b'shata. She doesn't have to. Remember, we did this mission before that there were chumras that when a woman would see her blood, so she would have to either go back 24 hours and say anything that she touched was tameh, or back to the last time she checked and said anything that she touched was tameh. But since we don't do tameh and Torah nowadays, it's not relevant to us, but that's what this mission is talking about. So if she is an older woman and she went through 3 cycles without seeing any blood, all of a sudden she sees cycles. She sees blood, I'm sorry, she does not have to go backwards in time and say things that she touched was in tameh, only what's in the tameh from now on. Okay, va'od ovru aleha shlosha onos ra'os. If it happens again, also daya b'shas. If all of a sudden she goes through another 3 cycles, and then the last one she sees, also she doesn't have to worry about going backwards in time. Va'od ovru aleha shlosha onos ra'osa hari hi kachol nosha. But if it's 3 cycles of 3 cycles, if it happens 3 times, then she becomes like a regular woman, and umetama me'es la'es or b'kida b'kida. And we say lemafreya before she saw this, the blood. Then we go back either 24 hours or to the last time she checked, which is Hillel's position.
So she gets a new vest of 3 months, basically.
She gets a
new vest of 3 months. She gets a new cycle of 3 months.
Exactly. Now she's, yeah. Now she becomes like a normal woman, though, right? If this pattern repeats itself 3 times, now she's back to being like a normal woman who sees blood. According to Hillel, has to go back 24 hours or to the last checking, whichever one is smaller, of course. Okay. Now, here the Mishnah says, afilu pichata velo miboy kivna. Here's the phrase that is rather startling, because it says even if, now there's cycles which are, there are cycles which are kavua and not kavua, that are constant and inconstant. Okay, so it says here, even if these cycles were not consistent, in other words, she didn't see on the 30th day all the time, v'afilu pechusa v'lo miboy kavana. Not only if it was inconsistent, if it was, how do you say that, non-consistent intervals, but even if it was consistent intervals, she still goes, when she sees blood, doesn't have to go back in time and say that things are matame. That's what it says. So that should be a lozu afzu, which means what? We said lozu afzu. The second one is always the big chiddush, right? So here it says not only if the onot were, the intervals were not consistent, but even if they were consistent. So that's a lozu afzu. The bigger chiddush should have been consistency. So the Gemara jumps on this, and that's why he brought it and says adarabba ki kivna kivale vesita v'daya shata. He says no. It's not a lozu avsu. When there's more reason to say that she should die a sha'asa, when it should have said if she had a regular period, period, or she had an irregular period. That's what it should have said, because the bigger chiddush to say an irregular period. The standard period, we can understand why she should get the cool of not going back 24 hours. But in the irregular period, there's more reason to say she should go back in time. So it's backwards, the lozu afsu. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to dwell on it. But the point is like this. A lozu afsu means the second part of the statement is a bigger chiddush. And he brought this example because it turns out that in this particular example, it doesn't work out that the second one's a bigger chiddush. Okay? But his point is that whenever you see an afilu, you always have to spell out both parts. You have to say the lozu, which is the smaller chiddush, and the afsu, which is the biggest chiddush. And here he brought the example to show you that the Gemara itself is going to be aware that the second part is a bigger chiddush. And if it doesn't work out like it does in this case, it's got to ask a kasha. This is not a lozu afsu. Okay? Beseda?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's go to the next lashon. The lashon afalpi v'afalgav. Okay. Even though, lashon even though. Hem baim l'rabot u'lichlo hadavra ahu ba'oso din o inyan. If you remember in Tunis, this was called a lechora macheshes. Lechora, the din of this, in this case, shouldn't be there. The way the Dr. Gemara explains it is, it's telling you it's nichlo. It's even though you might have thought that this din is not there, it's including this case into that din. Hem baim l'rabos lichlo hadavra ahu ba'oso din oinya. It's a ribui. It's lashon ribui. You might have thought it's not there, but afal pikain, it is there. Koloma. The im tirashiyesh suffik bo. If you have some sort of question whether this case should have that din, the tirashiyesh suffik ma inyan zeh o davazeh, mikol makom kach teno. You might have a doubt that the din should not be there. That's, we call it lechora macheshes. That's why it's an afal pi or an afal gav. Even though there's a reason why you might doubt to say that the din is not there, I want to tell you, says the afal pi, it is there. It is nichlo, this din, in this case, in that din. And here he brought the example of Rosh Hashanah, Afal Gav, the Megillah Tainis Batla, the Chanukah Purim Lo Batla. Even though Megillah Tainis was all the days that we had these, it was us at the fast. So even though you can fast on all the other days mentioned there, when it comes up Chanukah and Purim, they didn't Mevatel, and it's us at the fast on Chanukah and Purim. So again, L'chara, you would think since all Tainis were or the Megillah Esther was Batla, right? Meaning what? That now you can fast on any day you want. The answer is on Hanukkah and not. It was never Batla, and therefore you can't fast on those days. Okay? You would think all of them are days you can fast on. There's no more days that you cannot fast on in that whole list. In that list also Hanukkah and Purim, and the answer is no. Those 2 days were not. Okay? So it comes to include Hanukkah and Purim days that you can fast. No, you cannot fast, I'm sorry. Okay. Now, here was the Micah Mashlan Peshita. And this too, Micah Mashlan Peshita and the Mashna, he does not even define it. He just puts them down as key points. So this Micah Mashlan Peshita is one of his foundation stones, of the whole Sefer, because he says a very, very important chiddush that every statement that we have from the Chachamim, I mean from the Chumash and body of the Chachamim, they're all chidushim. And chidushim means you would have thought something else. So it can never turn out, and he brings this as a proof. The fact is, the Gemara says Peshita, if you would have known any of the information before, so then from another statement or Kolsha came from Metzias, you would always ask the Kasha Peshita. So there could be nothing that is obvious because it either was written clearly or because we know it from another text, or Kolsha came that we know it mitzad teva. So whenever one of those situations turn up, the Gemara always asks Peshita. Okay? So I just brought a little example of it. He didn't bring an example. I just brought it up together. Eisrei Rav Nachman Rav Huna, Yashiv L'Rabos, Shava Kesed Ofilu Subin. Rav Huna, which I should have brought here, said that you can bring Meitav or Kesed. That's what he said. In other words, when you want to pay back for damages, you can either pay back with the best of your land or money. Those are the two things that Rav Huna stated. Okay, our mission just says Meitav Aretz, and he came and he said, no, it's not only Meitav, it's Kesef also. So Rav Nachman asked on Rav Huna, wait a minute, there's only two possibilities. That means the best of your land and Kesef. The pasuk says Yashiv, Kesef Yashiv L'Ba'alav. Yashiv is an extra word, and we learned L'Rabo Shava Kesef Afilu Subin. There's a third possibility that you can give tangibles, metallic movables, and not even good movables, even subin, the worst grain. So that was the kasha that they asked on the statement of Rav Huna, who said you either have to give kesef or meitav. We have another limud that says yoshiv even shava kesef. So the Gemara answers hacham ha'eskinen b'delei. No, when Rav Huna was talking about those two possibilities, kesef and shava kesef, it was only talking about when you don't have shava kesef. All you have is kesef or shava kesef. I'm sorry, it's not true. What I just said. Really, you have to pay with kesef or meitav. If you don't have kesef or meitav, then you pay with shava kesef. Okay, that's what it means. When you don't have kesef or meitav, you have to pay. You can pay with shava kesef. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. If he doesn't have kesef or meitav, obviously he has to use shava kesef. What else is he going to do? Not pay it at all. So the Gemara supplies a havamina. Mahu the same. Why would you think, yes, he should not give the shava kesef? Mahu the same. Amrina kesef? No, there's a havamina that he should take this subin and any other metatlin, go out and sell it, and then bring Kesef or Meitav, whatever, but not to give him the pseudonym. Kamash Malan, the Chiddush of the pasuk of Yeshev is that he does not have to go out and sell it. He can use the metaltalin. Okay, so this I would like to go over another example which has all the 4 steps, just because of completeness. Remember that Yitzhak Konfentone told us there's a certain parry in the Gemara which starts off with Peshita. I'm not going to go through the example now, we don't have time, but it starts off with Peshita, that the statement is obvious, right? It then will say Lo Tzricha, right? Okay. Lo Tzricha, because Eitz Tzrich Salka Daita Chamina, and provide a Havamina that you would have thought the statement is not true, the opposite, right? And then the last move, which more doesn't always do, is called the Eimah Hachinami, where it says, wait a minute, now that you provided the Havamina was so strong, so maybe it really is true the Havamina is strong, and this is too big of a Chiddush. So we have to prove why the big Chiddush is not true. So we're going to go over this next time, because it's a parry in the Gemara that happens many, many times, and it's one of his foundation points. Okay, even though he doesn't bring the example, it's because he just brought it so many times in the book. Okay, so next time we'll pick it up over here, and we'll bring this example.
So we're almost done with this, right? This is basically the end.
Yeah, really. Well, once we finish this, then we have to go through his. Yeah, it's not almost done. He brings 24 terms. Key terms. Now, why he breaks up the Lashon the way he does, he says here's the Lashon Lashanot Hayotin Ogim B'Talmud, right? B'Masan, oh, I understand why I forgot. Here, he's going to talk Masan Matan Lashon. What we just went through is not Masan Matan Lashon per se, even though Peshita was, and in this other book by Lang, he says this really belongs in the next section. What we were doing with these other Lashon, just telling you how the language was used. Is it a Tosefes Biur? Is it a hemshech of something? Is it a miut of something? That's how the Mishnah will express itself. But in the Mas and Matan, we have a whole group of keywords, and that's going to be these 21 that we are going to go through, and then that will be the end of basically the end of Sefer. Okay, so these are the Mas and Matan words. We have to go through them, and I'll also try to bring examples, or else we'll just fly through them. And Bezat Hashem, then we'll really be finished with the book. And then the next thing I hope to do to complete the whole series is Melitza, and then we've got the whole shebang. I mean, we have all the technical aspects of it.
Right.
And then all the tools. What I'd like to do then is this piece on Meitav that I just showed you.
Right.
This piece on Meitav is a fantastic Iyun piece by the Nachlas David. So I would like to go through the piece using the methods and show not only how we analyze, but how the great Chachamim put together all this learning into a consistent whole, where one doesn't necessarily see a consistent whole. That's the beauty of what they're going to be doing. Okay, so my aim here is really my secret aim, not so secret. I really want to present the tools of Iyun, but the end of the game is to do Iyun, not to do Bekiyas, and that has to. But if you don't know the scorecard, then it's totally there's no language to talk. But once we have the language, then we have to apply it and see how things really work in reality. And that's the exciting part. If we can do that, that'll be a fantastic culmination of a lot of years' work.
Okay. Very good. And I got your email. I'm going to look at it and we'll see.
Okay. Beset or whatever it is. I said the ikers that we're learning. I don't really care about anything else. But if it fits in your schedule with Bakasha, why not? If it doesn't, so that's also great. I really this to me is what they say. It's Yotemi Kesef Zahav. The learning of Torah is the real value in life. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, Bezat Hashem, we'll see you next week. And we're really getting close to the end. Once we do Melitza, that's a complete toolbox. And okay, maybe we find other, things that Rabbeinu Chaim does. I'm not saying no, but at least we should really have a complete language to understand what we're doing consciously. Bezat Hashem.
Okay.
Okay, have a great week.
I'll see you next
Cool.
week. Okay.
Bezat